Well, it's pretty simple. If you underperform, you lose commits.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Got a fun episode for you today, at least I think it is. We're going to talk our Big 12 watch guide for the weekend, who to root for as we get closer and closer to Arlington, and maybe there's one opponent that Kansas State has to take on later on this season. We're going to dive into a K-State legend who's now going to be taking his talents into the coaching pool inside the NFL and what that could mean for K-State in the future, if it means anything at all. And then we're going to talk about what we lead today's show with. Kansas State loses a commit with 3-star heading over to the West Coast inside the Big 12. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, bringing you Wildcat coverage like no one else, your team every day. This is a tough one to talk about, because we are losing a commit, but that's just the way this rolls. You find a way, it happens. And we're starting this episode today with 3-star safety Haninibal Navies has flipped his commitment from Kansas State to Arizona. This news dropped on Wednesday evening, and it was about 5:30-ish is when it dropped, and we're getting more information on it now. But the 6'1", 180-pound safety was committed to Kansas State since the middle of June 15th, actually, so right smack in the middle. And it sounds like Arizona pursued him and really never gave up on him the entire season of 2025. Coach Brennan over at Arizona continued the run there, and they've had a good season so far this year, and they found a way to get him over there. They extended an offer to him on October 12th, right after he made an official visit to Tucson on October 11th. So although he was committed to Kansas State, he was still making official visits elsewhere, and that's not really unheard of. We're hearing this a lot. It's happening a lot with college recruiting these days, and he decided to make that change now. I want to put something straight on the record here, and I led with this. If you're underachieving, if you are not living up to the hype that you should be, then there's going to be certain players that decide to go elsewhere if they don't see the success or they don't see a future in the program. There are going to be some of those players. I'm not saying that that's what this is, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to definitely have some sort of small assumption, and maybe it carries a small weight, maybe it carries a large weight. We don't know, especially in this new world of NIL, when there's money involved in these transactions and these commit flips and things like that. But you can't tell me that the reason that he flipped has nothing to do with Arizona beating Kansas State earlier in the season. I bet it helps. Now, is it the number one priority? Probably not. Most likely not. But the fact that K-State didn't get that win, and even it was a non-conference game, it was a game they should have won, and they were embarrassed. It was probably the worst game they played all season. And that's probably a big reason why we see Haninibal Navies flipping to Arizona. It's not like he's from the West Coast, because he's not. He's from Grayson High School out of Loganville, Georgia. He's a 3-star safety, and now he becomes the 21st member of the Arizona Wildcats, not Kansas State Wildcats, Arizona Wildcats recruiting class. That leaves the defensive backs for the class of 2026 down to only 3, and really only one safety left on the docket for K-State. Now, I don't think they're done, and we still have a couple weeks, almost a month until actual National Signing Day. So I think there's still going to be a couple movements in, but Nick McLennan, the high school safety out of Christian Brothers College from St. Louis, Missouri, is the only other safety on the board for K-State for the 2026 class. He's a 3-star as well. According to Rivals, he's an 88 grade, 24/7, also has a 3-star at 86 grade. And in the state of Missouri, he's either seen as the 10th best in the state or 14th best in the state, depending on what industry ranking you're looking at. So there's still some good things in the safety department that you can be excited about. And of course, you have Garrick Dixon as well, the cornerback out of O'Fallon, Missouri, who is seen as the 13th or 19th best cornerback in the state. I said 3 earlier. It's only 2. It's only 2 left. It was 3 defensive backs with the exception of Navies, who has committed out of Arizona. You do have an athlete in Tanner West who's labeled as an athlete, but he's either going to be a running back or wide receiver. He will not be a defensive back, at least from what we know at this moment. So there's a lot to be desired for this new recruiting class that comes in the secondary, because that's one of the major concerns that Kansas State has right now. They have a lot of young secondary. They did bring in some players in the transfer portal that still have years of eligibility left, but you'd probably like to see more defensive backs in a recruiting class, in a freshman class, if you will, than just one safety, one corner. And, this is obviously going to, I'm guessing, get a little bit bigger. This recruiting class is pretty small so far right now. There's only 16 commits on the list. Last year, there was 25, if I remember correctly, overall. So let me make sure I get that right number for you exactly, if this page loads while we're talking here. But 16 commits. Yeah, there was 25 commits for Kansas State in the 2025 class. So there's still plenty of time for them to pick up. And just because National Signing Day is less than a month away doesn't mean that they can't pick up late bloomers, if you will, ones that maybe enroll after January that can come in later on. Remember, Lincoln Cure didn't enroll until later on in the season because he wanted to play. And he didn't enroll in January. He wanted to finish out his high school career. He wanted to not show up to spring ball, all that good stuff. So you can definitely get still some good recruits, some good players like that after National Signing Day. So something just to keep in mind. Although Lincoln Cure did sign on National Signing Day last year, it was one of the last minute things we saw. It doesn't mean that it won't change for Kansas State moving forward. But if you don't make a bowl game, if you go 5-7, and even if you go 6-6, right, there are going to be some players that don't see the right direction with this program. They might be questioning the coaching staff. They might be questioning the athletic department. They might be thinking that in their 4-year tenure at some point in their college career, if they want stability, they might not see it down the road. And they might think, well, there's a good chance that maybe Kansas State makes a coaching change, whether it's via firing or via retiring or anything like that. And that's not a good sign. You don't want that feeling, but there's definitely going to be that type of feeling if you have a K-State football program that is not living up to the hype, which is happening right now. Let's be real, folks. It's not happening. This team should have been 10-2, 9-3 at the lowest. And you're lucky if they make a bowl game. They got to go 2-1 to finish the season to get themselves just eligible to make a bowl game. So I do think that this will not be the last recruit that flips. I'm not saying that there won't be other players that flip in the direction of K-State. No coaching changes have happened so far. So everybody's working very hard on the recruiting trail. They just picked up a recruit, and we talked about on yesterday's episode. But of course, when a defensive back, especially when the secondary of Kansas State's been struggling this season, decommits, it definitely makes you question if that's the right path, if there's been issues going on, maybe on the recruiting front or maybe on that coaching front with those position groups. Maybe there's some rumors or maybe some things swirling around that some changes in that front might change. A lot of things to keep in mind as we get closer and closer to the offseason. Signing day is December 3rd. And then remember, there's only one transfer portal, which happens in January as well. So crazy stuff happened in December and January for Kansas State football. There's a lot of stuff to break down. But as of right now, it got one player less after this week with the departure heading to Arizona, safety Haninibal Navies, who flips his commitment from Kansas State to Arizona, one Wildcat to the other. And maybe he sees a little bit more security with Brett Brennan, which is wild to say because I thought Brett Brennan was going to be on the hot seat this year, and he's done completely the opposite. He's found some stability with that program, and he's starting to build up some momentum on the recruiting trail. That's a bad thing for K-State when you're starting to see some of these other teams inside the Big 12 that were supposed to be seen as a team below you start get recruiting momentum and stealing players that are nowhere near their pipeline, their state pipeline, right? This is a Georgia kid that is deciding to go to Arizona instead of Manhattan in this one. So not the best feeling in the world, but it's not the end of the world either. The sky is not falling, but it's obviously something to keep in mind and to maybe throw a little bit of a red flag up, maybe half mast, if you will. Pay attention to it as we continue on with the rest of the season and heading into the offseason in December. Let's flip sides to maybe a little bit more of a lighter conversation. Maybe it won't be. Who knows? But an NFL legend, and of course, a Kansas State legend, is moving into the coaching ranks, heading into the NFL. What does that mean for the future of K-State's coaching staff? We'll talk about that next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, it's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Kansas State, I'm going with Austin Romaine. He delivered in a big way. When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation, no delay. The first drive of the game, club in hand, it didn't matter. He got the interception, and he played great. Only 2 missed tackles with a club on your hand, and that football IQ, that leadership, and that NFL draft prowess, he continues to impress in a K-State uniform. And just like Austin Romaine delivered for Kansas State, DoorDash delivers you Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms to apply. A promo period ends 11/18. Well, everybody wants to talk about a former Kansas State player heading into the coaching ranks and maybe even someday finding himself being a coach in Manhattan. But what about this one? What about Darren Sproles, the former running back for Kansas State, obviously played in the NFL for 15 seasons. Well, he's in the news. He was on the Kay Adams show on Wednesday afternoon, and he dropped some news that he's going to take an intern role on the Denver Broncos coaching staff with Sean Payton, someone who was with when Sean Payton was the head coach of the Saints when Sproles was a player. And he's going to really focus on working with the running backs. Surprise, surprise. One cool thing about that is he was asked on the Kay Adams show who he's most excited to work with, and he brought up another Kansas State player. He brought up Deuce Vaughn, the running back who was with the Dallas Cowboys for quite some time, was released after the preseason this year and picked up by the Denver Broncos. I think that's a big reason why we're going to see Darren Sproles take in a intern job with the Denver Broncos. He wants to get into coaching. He spoke on the show that he was working with some high school coaching right now, and he's going to try and shift into the NFL side, trying to get more in the professional coaching things. But that, of course, leaves you to wonder. And it kind of brings us back to what we were discussing earlier in the season when you could have started to make those speculations of when is it going to be the end of the tenure for Chris Klieman. And of course, this is more talking about not if he gets fired, but more of he's getting older. Is there going to be a time where he retires and maybe they make a change at the head coaching position? Well, of course, you bring up Colin Klein, who's an offensive coordinator at Texas A&M. They're doing a really good job. His name keeps popping up in a lot of the head coaching searches because there are a ton of open jobs in the Power 4 right now. And then, of course, even in the G5 as well. What about Darren Sproles? I'm not saying he jumps right to a head coaching job, but if he works this internship, if you will, with the Denver Broncos, becomes an analyst, maybe works as a running back coach, could you see him maybe climbing the ranks and finding himself on a K-State staff in the future? Would that be something that you would be interested in as a Kansas State fan? I mean, his name is hanging. You'd want that, right? He's one of those amazing players, arguably the best player in K-State history. So having him on the coaching staff, I think would be a lot of fun, especially if you took the route in the near future, if you found a way to get Colin Klein to come in. This is, again, in the near future. No one's getting fired in this scenario. And maybe Darren Sproles works on that staff as well. That'd be really fun. I feel like that'd almost be like a playing Madden kind of fun, or College Football 26, getting all these former players to be on your coaching staff. But it's also possible. And it sounds like Darren Sproles is trying to take this route so he can get into coaching, so he can get into this rhythm and routine. He said that's something he feels like he's missing in his life, this routine. And maybe that is something down the road. That's the first thing that came to my mind. It wasn't the fact of, oh, he's going to be working with the Denver Broncos. And of course, it was really fun to hear what he had to say about Deuce Vaughn, saying that he thinks he sees a lot of him in Deuce Vaughn, and wants to do a couple tweaks, and he thinks he can have a long NFL career. But of course, the first thing that came to my mind was, man, how cool would it be if the future you could see him on the sidelines in Manhattan coaching for the K-State Wildcats. Of course, I think that would be a really fun conversation. I definitely had to bring it up on this show today. What do you think? Do you think that is something that could ever happen? Darren Sproles being a head coach, maybe, or even just an assistant coach, offensive coordinator, running back coach of the future for K-State athletics. That'd be very fun if that was the case. And don't get me wrong, a Colin Klein, Darren Sproles offense on the sidelines coaching somebody, that sounds pretty fun too. There's no doubt about that. But either way, that's a good old speculation. And that was just a fun one to have on a Friday here on this conversation. Something lighter because of the decommitment, the commitment flip that we talked about in the first segment. I wanted to get something lighter on this show. And what a perfect time for him to go on the Kay Adams. What was funny is he was either a very good actor or he wasn't planning on dropping that news, but Kay Adams brought it out of nowhere. He said, she said, we need to talk about a job that you're about to accept. And he kind of went off and said, how do you know about this? I have no idea. I haven't brought this up to anybody. And he actually said he hasn't made a decision yet, but he sounds like he's leaning to saying yes to it. And I think now that that's getting some national traction and went viral on social media, I think we are going to see Darren Sproles take a coaching job on the Denver Broncos coaching staff as an intern. We'll see what that happens for the future for, of course, the K-State legend. I wish him a whole bunch of luck. I hope it works out. I'd love to see him as an offensive coordinator somewhere, maybe even a head coach of the future in a world that we live in. Former players usually do a very good job in the coaching ranks. And he was such an interesting player, such a dynamic, such an original, creative type of player that I feel like he'd be a very good coach because he had to find ways to achieve things because of his size that most players didn't have to worry about. So I'm sure he has to worry about different kinds of structures, different types of systems, and I'm sure that routine probably works really well in the coaching realm. All right, let's flip sides. Let's talk about what we're going to see this weekend. The Big 12 is loaded. Of course, College Game Day is here this weekend, but there's a lot more to talk about. Let's talk about who to root for, hate watches, all that good stuff as we finish up this show right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, well, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. And if you join right now, you join for free the Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lowest prices, and a dedicated support line. So visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Kansas State's not playing this weekend. There are 2 basketball games, men's and women's, on Saturday. If you are looking for some K-State things to do, they are at home as well. At least the men are. The women are on the road. They're taking on SMU. Both those games are on Saturday. But if you're looking for some college football to just kind of fill your void on a college football Saturday, there are plenty. There's actually some on Friday tonight as well when it comes to Big 12 play. We'll get to that in a second, but we have to highlight the biggest game of the week for the Big 12. And it's the biggest game in the country as well. It's College Game Day. It's BYU versus Texas Tech, number 7 in the country versus number 8. It's at Jones AT&T Stadium in Lubbock. And of course, we all know how good Texas Tech is. We just saw them play last week against Kansas State, and they're looking to continue their winning ways and move to 9-1 on the season and really solidify their spot in Arlington after this win against BYU, if they can do that. And on the flip side, BYU has looked really good. BYU has had a really good season. A lot of people doubted them, what would happen after Jake Retzlaff left, headed to Tulane, and then they went with the freshman signal caller and Bear Backmeyer. That has not been an issue whatsoever. They've been 8-0. They have not lost a single game all season, and they're looking to move to 9-0 on the year. So either way, that's going to be a really fun game. Let me know in the comments who you're rooting for. You think it's BYU? You think it's Texas Tech? Who do you think wins that game? I mean, if it's anything based on last week with those 5 turnovers for Texas Tech, I don't think BYU stands a chance. But BYU's defense is also really, really good. And so far, you can't count out Bear Backmeyer the way that he's been playing all season long. Let's switch real quick sides and let's talk about tonight's game. Houston taking on UCF. It's the space game. And Houston looks really good so far this season as well. 7-2, 4-2 on the season. They did just fall to West Virginia last week, and they were 7-1 when they fell. And it's kind of ironic. Last year, when we lost to Houston, we were 7-1. The wheels fell off. I made a joke with Parker Ainsworth over on Locked On Cougs as soon as he lost to West Virginia, because he loves to say that Houston broke Kansas State. Well, maybe West Virginia broke Houston. We'll see if that happens. If that's the case, then UCF might be winning that football game tonight. That one's at 7 o'clock Central on Fox Sports 1. If you are interested in watching any of our other opponents, well, not in the best luck. Both Utah and Oklahoma State, our next two opponents, have a bye week this week, but Colorado, the one we play to finish off the year, is playing that said West Virginia team, and that's at the exact same time of the College Game Day special at 11 o'clock Central between BYU and Texas Tech. Colorado and West Virginia will also be playing at 11. You'll have the BYU-Texas Tech game on ABC. Colorado and West Virginia will be on TNT. I've really enjoyed the TNT matches so far, the broadcast. I thought TNT has been doing a great job with the Big 12 so far this season. But Colorado, 3-6 on the season. One more loss, they'll be out of bowl contention. So I think you want to root for West Virginia here. If you're a fan of hoping that Kansas State can make it a bowl game, if for some reason you're heading into that final game against Colorado and you're both sitting at 5-6, that's a dangerous Deion Sanders, in my opinion. We've talked about that in the offseason, that there was a potential that we could be playing a 5-win Colorado team at the end of the season. I didn't think K-State would be in the same boat, but here we are. And I don't want that to happen. So I'm kind of rooting for Colorado to get one more loss on their belt before they head and take on Kansas State to finish the year. So I'm rooting for West Virginia in that matchup. And of course, West Virginia also 3-6. Whoever loses that game will be out of a bowl race. And finally, there's two more games on the docket, and you can consider these hate watches if you will. Kansas taking on Arizona. The winner of that game will become bowl eligible, whether you want to root against Arizona because they just stole a commit from you, or of course, always rooting against Kansas. Obviously, making sure they don't win a football game and get bowl eligible. The last thing we need is us to win the Sunflower Showdown 17 times in a row, but them to be bowl eligible and us not to be. So, of course, I'll be rooting for Arizona in this one. And then finally, Iowa State takes on TCU. A win for Iowa State would also make them bowl eligible, and TCU continues to try and stay alive in the Big 12 race. I'm rooting for Arizona, and I'm rooting for TCU in this one. Again, it should be a really fun week for college football. There's a lot of other really good games on. That's just the Big 12 slate, and that starts again tonight between Houston and UCF. But again, there's basketball for Kansas State on Saturday. Both the men's and the women will take on in action. Got Bellarmine against the men's squad, and the women's squad are taking on SMU. We get a lot more to cover on that. That'll be on the channel later on today, both a men's and a women's show. We got you loaded for a Friday day right here on Locked On Kansas State. So be sure to tune in. Make sure you keep checking the audio feeds every now and again. We're going to bring them out in the afternoon and the evening to keep you satisfied to get ready for the weekend. And of course, on Saturday, we're going to have reaction shows to both the men's and the women's game. Got a loaded weekend right here on Locked On Kansas State. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you are so you don't miss a single Kansas State Wildcats episode. All right, that's going to do it for us right here on Locked On Kansas State. And I thank you for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. For your second listen, why don't you go check out Locked On College Basketball? Isaac Shade and Andy Patton have you covered with everything college basketball. The season just got here, and those guys are killing it, as they always do. Make that your second listen of the day today. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And we'll see you back here next time right here on Locked On Kansas State.